the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture says the first hearings are expected to start in August. Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo gave an update on the Commission's work today. eNCA's Erin Bates is on the story and joins me now. Erin, so not only was the Commission revealing its new logo, but also telling us that they have actually hit the ground running. What are the details in as far as these first hearings are concerned?
So all we know is that these hearings will begin in August if everything goes ahead as planned. And Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo saying there it's likely there will be some kind of adjournment soon afterwards. So we will have a first leg of hearings, it sounds like. Then there will be some sort of pause and they will resume further down the line. We, myself and other journalists, pressed him for some big names we can expect before this inquiry, but he was very coy on that front and told us to just hold our horses and wait it out till further down the line.
Yeah, in fact, and the assurance coming from the Deputy Chief Justice, Erin, is that just because we don't see moving parts doesn't mean nothing is happening. Telling us that they've been working to try and secure the cooperation of government departments and entities.
Yes, and importantly also talking with information from the head of legal about drafting letters to counsel for some of the people who will be called to witness, to give testimony before this inquiry. So those letters are being drafted, also notices to be published in the public government gazette in order to invite members of the public to come forward with any information they may have around state capture for the work of this inquiry.
But the time frame of 180 days, it seems, is a bit unrealistic, Erin?
Very much so, and this is something that Deputy Chief Justice raised before when he had his last briefing in March, him saying they estimate this will take at least a year and a half, if not 2 years, as things stand at this point, but that's a moving target, that if they find the work is going to take less time, perhaps because of other processes going on, led by the NPA or in Parliament, they will amend that ballpark sort of estimation on the deadline, and if things go over, they'll have to consult with the Office of the President and maybe approach the courts in order to get that time frame increased.
So at that briefing, Erin, I heard you ask a very important question that has to do with the terms of reference, particularly the one that has been amended by President Cyril Ramaphosa after he took office. Absolutely important that we get clarity on that, isn't it? What did you hear from the horse's mouth? What is the import of all of this, particularly in as far as evidence that will be led to the Commission and the potential for that evidence to be used in later legal processes?
Yes, that's a crux issue in terms of those terms of reference. This inquiry was announced by former President Jacob Zuma, him giving the name of the chairperson, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, at the beginning of the year in January. Of course, he'd opposed the recommendations to set up this inquiry when the public protector, Thuli Madonsela, released her report in 2016. So some of that is the background to this. The real crux section of the terms of reference is Section 8.2, and that regards the evidence, the testimony that witnesses give during this inquiry. Initially, the ruling or the phrasing of it was that none of that evidence could be used in criminal prosecutions. But that has since been amended to say that if a witness gives evidence that incriminates themselves, that evidence cannot be used in criminal prosecutions, but evidence that may incriminate others may be used in criminal prosecutions, but with the proviso that it has to fall under certain acts of law. But in layman's terms, it's basically saying if you rat on yourself, you won't get into trouble, but if you rat on someone else during your testimony in this inquiry, that information may be used going forward in criminal prosecution.
So just a final one then, Erin, the other logistics have to do with the conclusion of contracts for investigators, securing of space for the Commission to carry out its work from?
Yes, I think that's quite an important one to us because these investigators were set to get to work soon after that March briefing on the work of the inquiry and its team. But Zondo is saying today that hasn't happened, and the reason it hasn't happened in the anticipated timeframe is because of the need to consult with different government departments, including departments with information on intelligence, obviously the sensitivity around the kind of work these investigators are going to do. So the anticipation that they would hit the ground running within days of that briefing in March just simply has not happened, and there have been consultations with different government departments around their work moving forward. And of course, all of this is incredibly sensitive. We're talking about state capture, looking at issues around Denel, around SARS, around government projects where money has sort of been frittered away and found itself in very interesting bank accounts around the world. And so the work of these investigators is highly sensitive. And from what we've heard today, it does seem as though Zondo and some of his team are acutely aware of not only their responsibility to the South African public, but also the sensitivity and security needs around their work.
All right, thank you so much for that update. That's eNCA's Erin Bates telling us about that media briefing that was held by Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo.